Emma Sinclair stood at the floor-to-ceiling windows of the Barcelona penthouse, watching the Mediterranean sunrise paint the sky in shades of gold and coral. The city stretched below her like a living canvas, but she felt as distant from it as if she were viewing it from another planet.
6 years.
6 years of this perfect, empty existence. The coffee machine hummed behind her. Programmed to start at exactly 6:30 a.m., just as Lucas preferred. Everything in their shared space operated with clockwork precision, including their marriage. "Good morning, Emma." Lucas Montgomery's voice carried its usual professional warmth as he entered the kitchen. Already dressed in his signature charcoal suit, at 32, he possessed the kind of commanding presence that made boardrooms fall silent and competitors nervous. His dark hair was perfectly styled, his tie impeccably knotted, and his expression carefully neutral. "Morning, Lucas." She turned from the window, offering the polite smile she'd perfected over their years together. "The Yamamoto meeting is at 10, and your mother called. She wants to discuss the charity gala seating arrangements." He nodded, accepting the coffee she'd prepared exactly as he liked it. Black, no sugar, served in the white ceramic mug his assistant had ordered in sets of 12. Even their morning routine had become a corporate efficiency study. Emma watched him scan his tablet while drinking his coffee, his brow furrowed in concentration. Lucas Montgomery, the tech genius who'd revolutionized cloud computing before age 30, the man whose company Montgomery Technologies employed over 50,000 people worldwide, the husband who'd never once kissed her with passion. Their marriage had been a masterpiece of mutual benefit. Lucas needed respectability and stability to impress international investors who viewed young CEOs with suspicion. Emma's family architectural firm, Sinclair & Associates, had been drowning in debt after the 2018 financial crisis hit Barcelona's construction industry particularly hard. The solution had been elegant in its simplicity. Marriage would give Lucas the mature, settled image he needed, while the Montgomery name and resources would save for generations of Sinclair legacy from bankruptcy. The rules they never broke. "I'll be late tonight," Lucas said, adjusting his cufflinks. Video conference with the Tokyo team, then dinner with potential investors. Emma nodded, adding his schedule to her mental calendar. She'd learned to orchestrate their lives like a conductor managing a symphony, ensuring they moved in harmony. Without ever truly touching, the rules of their arrangement had been established during their first awkward conversations 6 years ago. Separate bedrooms, public affection limited to hand-holding and brief touches, private space respected absolutely, no emotional entanglements that might complicate their professional partnership. It had worked flawlessly. Lucas's company had tripled in value. Emma's family firm had not only survived but thrived, designing some of Barcelona's most innovative, sustainable buildings. They attended galas together, smiled for photographers, and maintained the image of a successful power couple. But as Emma cleared away his coffee cup, she caught a reflection in the window and barely recognized herself. Where was the woman who used to design buildings that defied gravity? The architect who dreamed of creating structures that would change how people lived and worked? She'd become a beautiful accessory to Lucas's empire, perfectly styled and completely hollow. The woman behind the designer dresses, after Lucas left. Emma retreated to her design studio, the one space in the penthouse that felt authentically hers. Blueprints covered every surface. Models of impossible buildings crowded the shelves. And natural light streamed through the skylights she'd insisted on during the renovation. Here, surrounded by her real work, Emma allowed herself to remember who she'd been before becoming Mrs. Montgomery. She'd graduated top of her class from the Barcelona School of Architecture, had been featured in European Design magazine before her 25th birthday, had won 3 international competitions. For sustainable urban planning, her phone buzzed with a message from Oliver Hayes, her former professor and current mentor. "Lunch today. Have something exciting to discuss." Oliver had been her advocate since university. The person who'd seen her potential when others dismissed her innovative ideas as too radical. At 35, he'd already established himself as one of Europe's most respected architectural consultants, and his opinions still mattered more to Emma than almost anyone's. They met at a small cafe in the Gothic Quarter, far from the corporate towers where Emma spent most of her time playing the role of Lucas's wife. Oliver's green eyes lit up when he saw her, and she felt a familiar warmth that had nothing to do with the Mediterranean sun. "You look beautiful as always," he said, kissing both her cheeks in the traditional Spanish greeting. "But I can see something's troubling you." Emma had always been transparent with Oliver. He was one of the few people who knew the true nature of her marriage, who understood the sacrifice she'd made for her family's legacy. 6 years, Oliver. 6 years of this arrangement, and sometimes I wonder if I'm disappearing entirely. He reached across the table, covering her hand with his. "You're too brilliant to disappear, Emma, which brings me to the reason I wanted to see you." The opportunity that changes everything. Oliver's eyes sparkled with excitement as he pulled out a thick portfolio. "How would you feel about designing the new International Cultural Center in New York?" Emma's breath caught. The project was legendary in architectural circles, a commission that could define a career. "Oliver, that's impossible. The competition closed months ago. They want you specifically. Your sustainable design philosophy, your ability to blend classical and modern elements. Emma, this could be your masterpiece." The portfolio contained preliminary sketches, budget projections, and a timeline that would require her to relocate to New York for at least 18 months. It was everything she'd dreamed of, and everything she couldn't have. "My marriage is a business arrangement," Oliver said gently. "Emma, you're 28 years old. You've saved your family's company. You've played the perfect wife for 6 years. When do you start living for yourself?" As they walked through the narrow streets after lunch, Oliver's words echoed in Emma's mind. When did she start living for herself? She'd been so focused on duty, on maintaining the perfect image, that she'd forgotten to want anything for herself. But as they passed a newsstand, a familiar face on a magazine cover made her stop, cold. Lucas photographed at some corporate event, but he wasn't alone. A stunning woman with sleek black hair and an elegant smile stood beside him, her hand resting possessively on his arm. The caption read, "Montgomery Technologies announces partnership with international consultant Sophia Chen. Will this childhood friend become more than a business partner?" The ghost from Lucas's past, Tima, purchased the magazine with trembling hands. Reading the article as Oliver looked over her shoulder with concern, Sophia Chen, it turned out, wasn't just any business consultant. She was Lucas's first love, his college girlfriend who'd broken his heart by choosing a career in London over a future with him. Now she was back, successful and single, ready to partner with Montgomery Technologies on their European expansion. The article included several photos from various events, and in each one, Lucas looked more animated, more genuinely happy than Emma had seen him in years. "Emma," Oliver said softly, "maybe this is the sign you've been waiting for?" That evening, Emma sat in her design studio, staring at the New York portfolio while the magazine lay open beside her. Through the penthouse's glass walls, she could see Barcelona's lights twinkling like earthbound stars. But for the first time in years, she found herself imagining a different view. New York's skyline. Her own building rising among the urban giants, her name on architectural history. At midnight, she heard Lucas's key in the door. He moved quietly through the penthouse, believing she was asleep. But Emma was very much awake, and for the first time in their marriage, she was planning to break one of their most fundamental rules. She was going to start wanting something for herself. As she finally headed to her bedroom, Emma caught sight of Lucas in his study, still in his suit, but with his tie loosened, staring out at the city with an expression she'd never seen before. For just a moment, he looked vulnerable, almost lonely. Had he been as trapped in their perfect arrangement as she was? Had he been quietly suffocating behind his corporate facade while she'd been disappearing behind hers? Tomorrow, everything would begin to change. But tonight, Emma allowed herself one last moment of wondering what might have been if their marriage had started with love instead of necessity. The stage was set. After 6 years of careful distance, the perfect arrangement was about to become perfectly complicated. The Barcelona morning felt different when Emma woke up. Maybe it was the dream she'd had about New York skyscrapers, or maybe it was the magazine photo of Lucas and Sophia that she'd stared at until 2 a.m. Either way, something had shifted in. The careful balance of her world. Lucas was already gone when she entered the kitchen. But he'd left something unusual behind. A handwritten note next to the coffee machine. Emma, would you join me for lunch today? There's something important I need to discuss. Lucas. In 6 years of marriage, Lucas had never asked her to lunch. Their public appearances were scheduled by his assistant, their private conversations limited to household logistics and social obligations. The handwritten invitation felt strangely intimate, and Emma found herself staring at his distinctive handwriting long after she'd memorized every word. At noon, Emma arrived at Disfruiter, one of Barcelona's most exclusive restaurants. She'd chosen a flowing emerald dress that brought out her eyes, though she told herself it was purely coincidental. Lucas was already seated at a corner table. He wasn't alone. The woman from the magazine sat across from him, even more stunning in person. Sophia Chen possessed the kind of effortless elegance that came from years of international success. Her black hair fell in perfect waves. Her designer suits suggested both professionalism and femininity. And when she laughed at something Lucas said, her whole face lit up. Emma watched from the entrance as Lucas smiled in response. It wasn't his polite corporate smile or his public appearance smile. This was genuine happiness, the kind she'd never seen him express in their 6 years together. Mrs. Montgomery. The hostess appeared at her elbow. Your husband is waiting. Emma approached the table. Both Lucas and Sophia stood. Lucas's expression was carefully neutral, but she caught something in his eyes. Guilt? Anxiety? Or simply the awkwardness of introducing his business wife to his first love? Emma, Lucas said, his voice carrying unusual tension. I'd like you to meet Sophia Chen, our new international consultant. Sophia, this is my wife. Emma. Sophia extended a perfectly manicured hand, her smile warm but assessing. I've heard so much about you, Emma. Lucas tells me you're an incredibly talented architect. The compliment should have felt genuine, but Emma detected something else underneath. Competition? Curiosity? The subtle evaluation of one woman sizing up another? Sophia and I knew each other in college, Lucas added. And Emma noticed how he avoided mentioning the romantic history the magazine had detailed so thoroughly. Lunch with the other woman. The conversation flowed with professional courtesy, but Emma felt the undercurrents like riptides beneath calm water. Sophia spoke passionately about Montgomery Technology's expansion into European markets. Her expertise evident in every detailed projection and strategic insight. The Barcelona headquarters could become our European flagship, Sophia explained, her eyes bright with enthusiasm. Lucas's vision for sustainable technology integration is exactly what the EU market needs. Emma found herself genuinely impressed despite her growing unease. Sophia wasn't just beautiful, she was brilliant, accomplished, and shared Lucas's passion for technological innovation in ways Emma never could. That sounds incredible, Emma said, surprised to find she meant it. How long will the project require your presence in Barcelona? Something flickered between Lucas and Sophia before she answered. At least a year. Possibly longer if the expansion exceeds projections. I've actually taken a lease on an apartment in the Gothic Quarter. It feels like coming home. Coming home, the phrase hit Emma harder than it should have. Barcelona was her home, the city where she'd built her life and career. But hearing Sophia claim, it felt like watching someone else try on her clothes. Where did you two meet exactly? Emma asked, though she already knew the answer from the magazine. Article, Harvard Business School, Lucas replied. Sophia was the star of our international economics program. Lucas was the star of everything. Sophia laughed, touching his arm with casual familiarity. Youngest person ever to present to the full faculty, graduated summa cum laude, had 3 job offers before graduation. Emma watched Lucas's face soften at the memory, saw how he looked at Sophia when she spoke. This wasn't just professional admiration or nostalgic friendship. The connection between them was electric, alive in ways that made Emma's carefully maintained marriage feel like a museum display. What made you choose London over staying in the States? Emma asked genuinely. Curious, despite her growing discomfort. Sophia's smile faltered slightly. Career opportunities. Sometimes we make choices we think are right at the time, but later, she glanced at Lucas. Later we realize what we gave up. The implication hung in the air like expensive perfume. Emma felt something unfamiliar stirring in her chest. Jealousy. She'd never experienced it before, had never cared enough about anyone to feel possessive, but watching Sophia look at Lucas with obvious regret and longing, Emma suddenly understood what she stood to lose. The architecture of jealousy, after lunch. Emma found herself walking aimlessly through Barcelona's winding streets instead of returning to the penthouse. The medieval stones of the Gothic quarters seemed to echo her footsteps as she processed what she'd witnessed over salmon and expensive wine. Lucas and Sophia had a history that went deeper than business school classmates. They shared inside jokes, finished each other's sentences, and communicated with glances that spoke of intimacy Emma had never experienced with her husband. Even their professional discussions carried an undercurrent of personal connection that made Emma feel like an outsider in her own marriage. Her phone buzzed with a message from Oliver. "Have you considered the New York opportunity? The client wants an answer by Friday." Friday? 3 days away? 3 days to decide whether to abandon the life she'd built in Barcelona for a chance at the career she'd always dreamed of. 3 days to determine if she was brave enough to start over at 28. But as Emma stood in the Plaza del Rey, surrounded by centuries of history, she realized her decision wasn't really about New York. It was about whether she could continue living a half-life while watching Lucas fall in love with someone else. Because that's what was happening. Even if Lucas didn't realize it yet, even if he was fighting it in the name of professional propriety, Emma had seen the truth in his eyes. During lunch, Sophia wasn't just his business partner. She was the woman he'd never gotten over. The love he'd buried beneath corporate success and convenient marriage. Evening confessions. Emma returned to the penthouse at sunset to find Lucas in his study. But instead of working, he was standing at the window with a glass of whiskey in his hand. He'd loosened his tie and rolled up his sleeves, and something about his posture suggested deep contemplation. "How was your afternoon?" he asked, without turning around. Enlightening. Emma poured herself a glass of wine from the bar they kept in the living room. "Sophia seems remarkable." Lucas turned then, studying her face with unusual intensity. "She is. Always has been." The honesty surprised Emma. In 6 years of marriage, Lucas had never discussed other women with her, had never acknowledged that their arrangement might prevent him from pursuing genuine relationships. The magazine article mentioned you two had a romantic history. Lucas's jaw tightened slightly. Ancient history. "We're both different people now, are you?" Emma moved closer, wine giving her courage she didn't usually possess. "Because from where I sat today, it looked like you were both exactly the same people you were 10 years ago, just older and more successful." Lucas set down his whiskey and turned to face her fully. "Emma, what are you really asking?" It was the most direct question he'd posed in years, and Emma realized she was tired of dancing around the truth of their situation. "I'm asking if our arrangement is preventing you from happiness, Lucas. Real happiness, with someone you actually love." The words hung between them like a bridge neither had expected to cross. For 6 years, they'd avoided discussions of love, happiness, or personal fulfillment. Those concepts existed outside the boundaries of their carefully negotiated marriage. "And I'm asking the same of you," Lucas replied quietly. "Oliver Hayes seems to think you're wasting your talents playing house with me." Emma blinked in surprise. "You know about Oliver? I know he's offered you projects before that you've turned down. I know he thinks you're too good for this life. And after seeing you today, watching you observe Sophia and me..." Lucas paused, running a hand through his hair. Maybe he's right. The night everything shifted, they stood in the living room as Barcelona's lights twinkled beyond the floor to ceiling. Windows. Two people who'd shared a home for 6 years finally having their first honest conversation. "What do you want, Emma?" Lucas asked. "Not what your family needs, not what our arrangement requires. What do you want?" Emma looked at this man she'd lived with but never really known. Lucas Montgomery, tech billionaire, corporate genius, the husband who'd never kissed her passionately or held her through a nightmare or told her she was beautiful unless cameras were present. But tonight he looked vulnerable. Tonight, he was asking questions that suggested he cared about her answer. "I want to design buildings that change how people live," she said slowly. "I want to see my name on something that will outlast me. I want to wake up excited about the day ahead instead of just managing it efficiently." Lucas nodded. "Oliver's New York project?" It's everything I've dreamed of professionally. But Lucas. Emma took a breath. What do you want? He was quiet for so long she thought he might not answer. When he finally spoke, his voice was barely above a whisper. I want to feel alive again. I want to remember what it's like to love someone who loves me back, not just tolerates me efficiently. He looked directly at her. I want to remember who I was before I became Montgomery Technologies. Sophia could give you that, maybe. But Emma, what we have, it's been comfortable, safe, predictable, and boring, Emma added with a rueful smile. And boring, he agreed. But also, it's been the most stable relationship I've ever had, even if it isn't real. They moved closer to each other, drawn by 6 years of careful distance finally collapsing. When Lucas reached out to touch her face, Emma didn't pull away. What if we tried? He whispered. What if we tried to make this real? Emma's heart hammered against her ribs. What about Sophia? What about New York? They stared at each other, both recognizing they stood at a crossroads that would determine the rest of their lives. Emma could see her reflection in Lucas's dark eyes, could feel his breath warm against her skin. For the first time in 6 years, her husband was looking at her like a woman, not a business partner. And for the first time in 6 years, Emma found herself wanting him to dot. Emma woke up in her own bed, but everything felt different. The conversation with Lucas had lasted until 3 a.m., filled with revelations that had rewritten 6 years of careful assumptions. They hadn't crossed any physical lines, but emotional boundaries had crumbled like ancient walls. Lucas was already in the kitchen when she emerged, but instead of his usual corporate armor, he wore jeans and a casual button-down shirt. He looked younger, more approachable, and when he smiled at her, Emma felt her pulse quicken. I called in sick, he said, handing her coffee prepared exactly as she liked it. It's not the way his assistant had programmed the machine, but the way she. I actually preferred it. When had he noticed she added a touch of cinnamon? You never call in sick? Never had a reason to before? His eyes held hers steadily. Emma. About last night, her phone rang before he could finish. Oliver's name flashed on the screen and Emma felt the weight of her undecided future pressing against her chest. I have to take this, she said apologetically. Emma, Oliver's voice was excited. I just spoke with the New York team. They want to meet with you today, via video conference. This is your chance to present your vision directly to the board. Emma looked at Lucas, who was pretending to read his tablet but obviously listening to every word. Today? In 2 hours? I know it's sudden, but they're making the final decision this week. Emma, this is your dream job. Don't let anything stop you from at least trying. After she hung up, Lucas set down his tablet and looked at her with an expression she couldn't read. The New York project. They want to interview me in 2 hours? Lucas nodded slowly. You should do it, should I? Emma, I meant what I said. Last night? I don't want to be the reason you don't chase your dreams. But even as he said it, Emma could see the conflict in his eyes. They'd just discovered the possibility of something real between them. Now she had to choose between her career and exploring what they might become. Sophia's strategic move as Emma prepared for her video conference, setting up her laptop in the design studio surrounded by her architectural models and sketches. Lucas retreated to his study. But instead of the solitude he expected, he found Sophia waiting in the living room. The doorman let me up, she explained, rising from the sofa with fluid grace. Hope you don't mind the intrusion, but we need to discuss the European expansion timeline. She wore a stunning red dress that complemented her coloring perfectly. And her smile held promises of shared lunches and late-night strategy sessions. Everything about her presence in his home felt deliberate, calculated to remind him of what he could have. Of course, Lucas said, though something felt off about her sudden appearance. Would you like coffee? Actually, I was hoping we could. Take this discussion somewhere more private. Your wife seems lovely, but some of these projections are highly confidential. Through the glass walls of Emma's studio, Lucas could see her setting up for her interview, her face glowing with excitement. He'd rarely witnessed it. She looked radiant, alive with purpose in ways their marriage had never provided. I think we should keep our meetings at the office, Sophia. Her smile faltered slightly. Lucas, I understand if this is awkward. Our history, I mean. But we're both adults? We can separate business from personal feelings. Can we? The question escaped before he could stop it. Sophia moved closer. Her perfume, a familiar scent that transported him back to Harvard, 2 late nights studying together, 2 dreams they'd shared before career ambitions pulled them apart. I made a mistake 10 years ago, she said softly. Choosing London over staying with you. I've regretted it every day since. Lucas felt the pull of old emotions, the memory of loving her with the intensity only first love could provide. But as Sophia reached up to touch his face, his eyes drifted to Emma, who was now animated in conversation with people on her laptop screen, her hands moving expressively as she described her architectural vision. Sophia, we can't what? Can't admit we still have feelings for each other? Lucas, your marriage is a business arrangement. Everyone knows that. The words hit him like a slap. Everyone doesn't know anything about my marriage. Sophia's voice took on a sharper edge. 6 years with separate bedrooms, public appearances that look more like corporate events than romantic dates. Lucas, you deserve real love, not a convenient arrangement. Emma's moment of truth in her studio. Emma was in the middle of presenting her most innovative design concepts to the New York board when she noticed movement in the living room. Through the glass walls, she could see Sophia leaning close to Lucas, her hand on his chest. Wait. Losing her train of thought as she watched her husband with the woman who clearly wanted him back, Ms. Sinclair. The board chair's voice brought her attention back to the screen. Are you all right? Sorry. Just let me show you the sustainability features of the main structure. Emma forced herself to focus, channeling 6 years of suppressed professional passion into her presentation. For the next 30 minutes, she forgot about Lucas and Sophia, forgot about her marriage and its complications. She was simply Emma Sinclair, architect, presenting the design that could define her career. Extraordinary work, the board chair said when she finished. Miss Sinclair, we'd like to offer you the position. It's full creative control, 18-month timeline, and a budget that will allow you to build something truly revolutionary. Emma's heart soared. I'm honored. When would you need an answer? End of business today. We know it's fast, but we're eager to begin construction. As the video conference ended, Emma sat back in her chair, staring at her architectural models. She'd done it. They wanted her. The dream job, the chance to build something magnificent. The opportunity to remember who she was beyond Mrs. Montgomery. But when she looked up, Lucas and Sophia were no longer in the living room. The final confrontation, Emma, found them on the terrace. Standing close together beside the plants she'd nurtured. For 6 years, Sophia was speaking in low, urgent tones, and Lucas looked conflicted, torn between past and present. Am I interrupting? Emma's voice carried an edge she'd never used with Lucas before. They sprang apart, guilt written across both their faces. Emma? We were just, Lucas began, discussing business, I'm sure. Miss' newfound confidence from the successful interview gave her strength she didn't know she possessed. Sophia, could you give us a moment alone? Sophia's eyes flashed with something like annoyance, but she maintained her professional smile. Of course, Lucas. We'll continue our discussion tomorrow. After Sophia left, Emma and Lucas stood among the plants she'd cultivated with more care than their marriage, surrounded by the life she'd built in the absence of real intimacy. They offered me the job, Emma said. Lucas's face went through several emotions before settling on resignation. Congratulations. You'll be extraordinary, will I? Or will I be running away from something that could finally become real? Lucas moved closer, and Emma could see the war being fought behind his eyes. Emma, what Sophia said. About our marriage being just business. Is it true? It was true. But last night, when we talked, when I saw you presenting today, he reached for her hands. Emma, I think I'd been falling in love with you so gradually, I didn't notice until I thought I might lose you. The confession hung between them like a bridge across 6 years of careful distance. And Sophia, it's my past. You could be my future, if you want to be. Emma looked into the eyes of the man she'd married for duty and discovered she might want to stay married for love. Lucas, I need to know this is real, not just panic because I might leave, not just competition with Sophia. Real. Instead of answering with words, Lucas cupped her face in his hands and kissed her. Not the polite pecks they'd exchanged for cameras, not the careful brushes of lips at public events. This was 6 years of suppressed desire, hidden attraction, and newly discovered love poured into a single, devastating kiss. When they broke apart, both were breathing hard. Real enough? But, Lucas whispered. Emma smiled, feeling alive in ways she'd forgotten were possible. It's a start. The choice that changes everything that evening, as Barcelona's lights twinkled below their penthouse, Emma and Lucas sat together on the terrace, closer than they'd been in 6 years of marriage. Emma's head rested on Lucas's shoulder, his arm around her waist, both of them marveling at how natural it felt. "What are you going to tell New York?" Lucas asked. "That I need more time? That I have something here worth exploring?" And Oliver will probably be furious. "But Lucas, I need something from you too." He turned to look at her. "Anything. I need a real marriage. Not just the physical part, though that's definitely going to change." She smiled as he laughed. "But everything. Sharing our days, our dreams, our fears, being partners in every sense. And Sophia, it's your business partner, nothing more. If she can't accept that, she'll have to work with someone else." Lucas kissed the top of her head. "You know, my mother is going to be insufferable when she finds out we're finally acting like a real married couple. Let her be insufferable. We have 6 years of marriage to make up for." As if summoned by their newfound intimacy, passion that had been buried under politeness and professional courtesy erupted between them. Lucas's hands tangled in Emma's hair as she pulled him closer, 6 years of want finally finding expression. "Are you sure?" he whispered against her lips. "I've never been more sure of anything." They made love for the first time as the Mediterranean breeze whispered through the plants Emma had tended with such care. In the space they'd shared but never truly inhabited together, it was passionate, tender, and filled with the promise of all the nights to come. Epilogue. 1 year later, Emma stood in Lucas's arms on the same terrace where they'd first kissed, but everything had changed. The plants were fuller, more vibrant, like their marriage. The penthouse felt like a home instead of a museum. "Any regrets?" Lucas asked, spinning her around as Barcelona sparkled below them. Emma laughed, radiant in the moonlight. "What? We waited so long," she'd turned down New York. But Oliver had forgiven her when she'd shown him the Barcelona projects Lucas had commissioned for her. Montgomery Technology's new headquarters, designed by Emma Sinclair Montgomery, was already being hailed as revolutionary architecture. Sophia had lasted 3 months before requesting a transfer to the London office. Unable to work with Lucas, once he'd made it clear his heart belonged to his wife, "Mrs. Montgomery," Lucas said, using her name like a caress. "Ready for bed?" Emma smiled, pulling him toward their shared bedroom, the master suite they'd finally moved into together 6 months ago. "Mr. Montgomery," she replied. "I've been ready for 6 years." As they disappeared into their home, their real home built on love instead of convenience, Barcelona continued its eternal dance below them. Witness to another impossible love story that had somehow found its way to happiness. Sometimes the greatest love stories begin with the most practical arrangements. Sometimes 2 people have to live as strangers before they can discover their soulmates. And sometimes the person you marry for all the wrong reasons turns out to be exactly the right person after all. The end.